Otto von Bismarck was not a German nationalist. He was first and foremost a Prussian. Born in 1815 into the landed aristocracy of Prussia, the Junkers, he was a man of the old world. In his youth, he was known as the Wild Junker, a towering figure famous for his prodigious appetite, his heavy drinking, his dueling scars, and his arch-conservative, monarchist views. He held a deep and profound contempt for the liberal, democratic, and nationalist movements that were sweeping across Europe. His entry into politics during the revolutions of 1848 confirmed his reputation. As liberals and nationalists gathered in Frankfurt to try and create a unified constitutional Germany, Bismarck was in Berlin, urging his king, Frederick William IV, to crush the revolution with military force. He was a reactionary of the highest order, a man who believed in the absolute authority of the monarch and the divine right of the Prussian aristocracy. To the liberals who dreamed of a unified Germany created by the will of the people, Bismarck was their most formidable and hated enemy. Yet, this arch-conservative possessed a brilliant, pragmatic, and utterly unsentimental political mind. During his years as a Prussian diplomat in Frankfurt, Paris, and St. Petersburg, he became a master of realpolitik, a political philosophy that rejects ideology in favor of the practical and ruthless pursuit of state power. He came to a startling conclusion. The forces of German nationalism were too powerful to be ignored or simply crushed. If Prussia could not defeat nationalism, he reasoned, then Prussia must seize it, control it, and use it for its own ends. The unification of Germany, he decided, would not be achieved by liberal speeches in a parliament. It would be achieved by the power of the Prussian state, for the glory of the Prussian king. In 1862, the Prussian monarchy was in a state of crisis. The new king, Wilhelm I, and the liberal-dominated Prussian parliament were locked in a bitter struggle over army reform. The king wanted to expand and modernize the army. The parliament refused to approve the necessary taxes, seeing a powerful army as a tool of royal absolutism. The situation was so dire that the king was considering abdication. In this moment of crisis, the conservatives at court played their last card. They appointed Otto von Bismarck as the minister-president of Prussia. It was a deeply controversial move, seen by the liberals as a declaration of war. Bismarck appeared before the Parliament's Budget Committee and delivered the speech that would define his entire career. He chided the liberals for their idealism and their faith in parliamentary procedure. He ended with a chilling and prophetic statement that would go down in history. The position of Prussia in Germany will not be determined by its liberalism, but by its power. The great questions of the day will not be decided by speeches and majority decisions. That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by iron and blood. The blood and iron speech was a direct challenge to the liberals. When they again refused to pass his budget, Bismarck did something unprecedented. He advised the king to simply ignore the parliament and its constitution. For the next 4 years, he ruled Prussia unconstitutionally, collecting the taxes and building the army in defiance of the legislature. He had created the modern, disciplined, and superbly equipped military machine that he would use as the primary tool to forge his new German state. Bismarck knew he could not simply declare Germany unified. He had to create it through a series of carefully calculated wars. Each war was designed to achieve a specific political objective: to isolate his enemies, to showcase Prussian military might, and to stoke German nationalist sentiment. The first of these wars, the War of the Three, was a masterful diplomatic rehearsal. The opportunity came in 1864 over the complex issue of the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein. These two territories, with a large German-speaking population, were ruled by the King of Denmark. When the Danish king tried to annex Schleswig, German nationalists were outraged. Bismarck seized the moment. He presented himself as the champion of German interests, but he cleverly maneuvered Austria, his great rival for dominance in the German Confederation, into joining him in an alliance against Denmark. The Second Schleswig War was short and decisive. The combined Prussian and Austrian armies easily defeated the Danes. The victory was a source of immense pride throughout the German states. But Bismarck's true genius lay in the peace settlement. He deliberately created a convoluted arrangement, where Prussia would administer Schleswig, and Austria would administer Holstein, which was awkwardly sandwiched between Prussian territories. He knew this condominium was an administrative nightmare that was guaranteed to create friction and conflict between Prussia and Austria. He had not just won a war against Denmark. He had already laid the perfect diplomatic trap for his next, more important enemy. Bismarck's next objective was to remove Austria, the traditional leader of the German-speaking world, from any role in a future unified Germany. The trap he had laid in Schleswig-Holstein worked perfectly. Tensions between Prussia and Austria over the administration of the duchies escalated, just as he had planned. Bismarck used this friction as a pretext for war, all the while painting Austria as the aggressor. His diplomatic preparations were masterful. He secured a crucial alliance with the newly formed Kingdom of Italy, promising them the Austrian-controlled territory of Venetia in exchange for their participation in the war. He correctly judged that Great Britain would not intervene, and most importantly, he met with the French Emperor, Napoleon III, offering him vague and unspecified territorial compensations along the Rhine to ensure French neutrality. In the summer of 1866, the Austro-Prussian War, or 7 Weeks' War, began. The result was a stunning and decisive Prussian victory that shocked Europe. At the climactic Battle of Königgrätz, or Sadowa, the Prussian army, led by the brilliant strategist Helmuth von Moltke, decisively crushed the Austrians. The Prussian army's superior organization, its use of railroads for rapid mobilization, and its deadly new needle gun, a bolt-action rifle that could be fired and reloaded much faster than the Austrians' muzzleloaders, proved overwhelming. In the aftermath of the victory, King Wilhelm I and his generals wanted to march on Vienna and impose a humiliating peace on Austria. It was here that Bismarck showed his true genius as a statesman. He furiously argued against it. He did not want to destroy Austria or make it a permanent enemy. He simply wanted it excluded from German affairs. He foresaw a day when he might need Austria as an ally. After threatening to resign, he got his way. The peace terms were remarkably lenient. Austria lost no territory to Prussia, though it did cede Venetia to Italy, but it was forced to dissolve the old German Confederation. In its place, Bismarck created the North German Confederation, a new federal state uniting all the German states north of the Main River under the permanent leadership of Prussia. Austria was out. Prussia was now the undisputed master of northern Germany. Only one obstacle remained to complete German unification: the powerful French Empire, led by the proud and ambitious Emperor Napoleon III. France would never willingly accept a strong unified Germany on its border. Bismarck knew that a war with France was inevitable, even necessary. He believed that a defensive war against the traditional French enemy was the only thing that could ignite a shared German nationalism, powerful enough to bring the independent, Catholic southern German states, like Bavaria and Württemberg, into the fold. All he needed was a pretext, a way to make France look like the aggressor. Once again, a complex royal succession crisis provided the opportunity. In 1870, the throne of Spain was offered to a German prince of the Hohenzollern dynasty, a distant cousin of the Prussian King Wilhelm I. The French were apoplectic. They saw the prospect of a Hohenzollern on the Spanish throne as a strategic encirclement and a massive insult. Though the prince eventually withdrew his candidacy, the French, seeking to humiliate Prussia, pushed too far. The French ambassador accosted King Wilhelm I while he was on holiday in the spa town of Ems and demanded a formal promise that the candidacy would never be renewed. The king politely refused the demand and considered the matter closed. The king sent a telegram to Bismarck in Berlin, describing the events. It was here that Bismarck performed his most famous act of political manipulation. He took the king's factual, diplomatic telegram and edited it, sharpening the language to make the French demand seem far more insolent and the king's refusal far more abrupt and dismissive. He then released this M's dispatch to the press. As he had calculated, it had the effect of a red rag to the Gallic bull. In Paris, the edited telegram was seen as a grave insult to French national honor, sparking outrage and calls for war. In the German states, it was seen as a grave insult to their king, sparking a wave of patriotic fury against France. The French government, pressured by an inflamed public, foolishly walked right into Bismarck's trap. On July 19, 1870, France declared war on Prussia. The Franco-Prussian War was an even more stunning success for Prussia than the war against Austria. The French army, which considered itself the finest in the world, was poorly led and overconfident. The Prussian military machine, now augmented by the armies of the southern German states, who immediately rallied to Prussia's side against the French aggressor, was a model of efficiency. Using their superior strategy of encirclement and their devastating Krupp steel artillery, the Germans won a series of decisive victories. The climax came at the Battle of Sedan on September 2, 1870. The main French army was encircled, and in one of the most humiliating surrenders in modern history, the Emperor Napoleon III himself was captured. The war continued for several months as the French formed a new republic and tried to resist, but the outcome was never in doubt. Paris was besieged and eventually starved into submission. The victory ignited a firestorm of German nationalism, just as Bismarck had hoped. The southern German states, swept up in the patriotic fervor, agreed to join the North German Confederation on January 18, 1871. In a final, carefully calculated act of humiliation against the French, Bismarck arranged for the German princes to gather in the magnificent Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, the very symbol of Louis XIV's former glory. There, they formally proclaimed the creation of the German Empire, with the Prussian King Wilhelm I as its first Kaiser, emperor. Germany was finally a unified nation-state, forged not by liberalism, but by the blood and iron of Prussian military might. For the next 2 decades, Bismarck, now the first imperial chancellor of the German Empire, would work with the same energy to preserve the peace of Europe that he had once used to provoke wars. He famously declared that the new Germany was a sated state, with no further territorial ambitions. His goal now was to protect the new empire by preventing any hostile coalitions from forming against it. He became the ultimate arbiter of European diplomacy, a giant on the world stage. He skillfully wove a complex web of alliances, the dual alliance with Austria-Hungary, the triple alliance with Italy, and the reinsurance treaty with Russia, all designed to isolate his old enemy, France, and to maintain a delicate balance of power on the continent. The Congress of Berlin in 1878, where Bismarck acted as the honest broker to settle a crisis in the Balkans, was the peak of his prestige. At home, his rule was more complex. While the German Empire had a constitution and a parliament, the Reichstag, elected by universal male suffrage, real power remained with the emperor and his chancellor. In the 1870s, he waged a culture war, Kulturkampf, against the Catholic Church, which he saw as a threat to the authority of his new Protestant-led state. Then, fearing the rise of socialism, he had anti-socialist laws passed while simultaneously pioneering the world's first modern welfare state, creating state-sponsored health insurance, accident insurance, and old age pensions in the 1880s. His motive was not compassion, but a pragmatic attempt to woo the working classes away from socialism by providing them with a measure of security. Bismarck's intricate and personal system of rule depended on one thing: the trust of his emperor. For decades, he had enjoyed a close, if often stormy, relationship with Kaiser Wilhelm I. But in 1888, the year of the three emperors, the old Kaiser died. He was succeeded by his terminally ill son, who died after only 99 days, bringing the ambitious, impetuous, and headstrong 29-year-old Wilhelm II to the throne. The young Kaiser was not content to be overshadowed by the aging Chancellor. He resented Bismarck's paternalistic authority and disagreed with his cautious foreign policy. Where Bismarck saw a sated state, Wilhelm II saw a new world power that deserved its place in the sun through colonial expansion and naval power. The two men clashed on both foreign and domestic policy. In March 1890, the inevitable break came. After a series of disagreements, Kaiser Wilhelm II forced the 75-year-old Otto von Bismarck to resign. The departure of the Iron Chancellor was famously captured in a British cartoon titled "Dropping the Pilot," showing Bismarck walking down a ship's gangplank while the young Kaiser looks on from the deck. Bismarck spent his final years in bitter retirement, writing his memoirs and sharply criticizing the Kaiser's reckless policies. He had built an empire through cunning, caution, and a clear understanding of the limits of power. He feared, correctly, that the young emperor lacked the skill to navigate the treacherous waters of European diplomacy that he himself had so masterfully controlled. He had unified Germany, but in doing so, he had created a powerful but volatile nation whose destiny was now in the hands of less capable men. He died in 1898, leaving behind a legacy as the single most important figure in the creation of modern Germany.